Flight crew detained after one unexpected call reveals incredible truth about CEO's son. The cabin crew buzzed with a mix of exhilaration and fatigue. Cassie Thompson, a spirited flight attendant, had just wrapped up another grueling day of back-to-back flights. But then, out of the blue, a call from Rick Donovan, CEO of the airline, shattered their routine. An emergency briefing over the intercom sent waves of unease through the crew. Cassie's heart sank. An incident had emerged involving his estranged son, Sam, and rippling headlines threatened to tarnish everything they had worked for. She felt the pressure of scrutiny already mounting, like a vice tightening around her ambitions and dreams. As they gathered around the conference table, Cassie's mind raced. Just yesterday, she'd fantasized about cultivating her dream of becoming an airline manager. Now, with every passing second, the weight of her family's expectations pressed harder on her shoulders. Secure a stable job, settle down, forget the dreams. She glanced at her partner, Dave, who stood unwaveringly supportive during the trying days that followed her fleeting moments of aspirations. But could she risk everything for a rumor about Rick Donovan's son? The whispers swirling among the crew stoked a flickering doubt deep within her. What if sticking her neck out meant jeopardizing her career, the one aspect of her life that glittered amid familial pressures? The meeting was a whirlwind of updates and fears. Cassie felt torn between loyalty to the company and empathy for a troubled young man desperate to shake off the shadows of privilege he seemingly loathed. As the details of Sam's situation unfolded, she found herself uncovering layers of his story. This was a young man lost in a world of expectations, a dropout from flight school, wrestling with the legacy of a father who had built empires, but hadn't he built a bridge to his own son? This wasn't just about Sam anymore. This was about what merit truly meant, especially in an industry that thrived on excellence. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Cassie's resolve solidified as pressure weighed heavy on her conscience. She envisioned her colleagues, hardworking crew members, suffering the ramifications of a corporate scandal led by bloodlines rather than merit. It gnawed at her, leading to sleepless nights filled with questions. Should she advocate for Sam? Should she risk her dream job for an underdog drowning in inherited privilege? Scrutiny was palpable, and fear swirled within her, tightening its grip like an uncoiling snake. Then came the blow. A colleague, someone she thought she could trust, leaked her intentions to corporate higher-ups. Cassie's heart dropped as icy dread washed over her. The stakes now amplified like a siren blaring its warning, resonating in her soul, a chilling sound of impending ruin. With everything hanging in the balance, she stood on a precipice, confronted by her own moral compass that was now in search of a clear answer among the fog of whispers and implications. What she had learned about loyalty, integrity, and self-preservation screamed within her, a whirlwind of anguish grasping at her resolve. Would she have the courage to confront this storm, even if it meant jeopardizing the best version of herself? As tension coiled tighter, Cassie knew this moment would change her life forever. Cassie arrived early the next morning, her stomach knotted with anxiety. The buzz in the break room felt electric, with whispers ricocheting like stray bullets. Glancing at her colleagues, she could see their eyes darting towards her. The fallout from the previous day's meeting hung heavy in the air, suffocating ambition and trust alike. As she poured coffee, she felt a wave of urgency wash over her. Unable to avoid the inevitable, she pushed her way towards a small cluster gathered around a workstation. Daryl, a senior flight attendant, locked eyes with her, his expression unreadable. "Cassie, I know this is rough," but he paused, wrestling his conscience before continuing. "We've all heard the rumors. Are you seriously going to get involved with that Donovan kid?" "I think there's more to the story than any of us know," she replied, threading determination into her voice. "He's not just some privileged slacker. We all have our struggles. Daryl's face hardened. But what if going against the company isn't worth it? You might lose everything you've worked for. The weight of his words hung heavy around her. Still, what had she worked for if it meant turning her back on something she believed was fundamentally right? She straightened her posture, realizing she had to find her voice amid the uncertainty. What's more important? Protecting our jobs at the cost of someone's character? At the cost of fairness? I can't just turn away. Despite the palpable tension, a flicker of something within her sparked. The part of her that daydreamed of leadership moments, standing tall during crises, rallying her team, standing for what she believed and fought bravely against the growing anxieties of failure and conflict. As the day unfolded, Cassie's resolve intensified. She spent her shifts gathering intel about Sam, piecing together bits of information from casual conversations with other crew members. Each snippet broadened her understanding of him, his struggles with personal demons and the weight of family expectations, mirroring her own. Perhaps both of them were seeking something that felt infinitely out of reach. When her shift finally ended, she took a deep breath and considered her next steps. Should she reach out directly to Sam? Find a way to let him know that while privileges provided a safety net, it didn't exempt him from the burden of his decisions. Walking out of the terminal, Cassie felt the world swirling around her, a frantic sea of passengers and flight schedules. A sense of clarity washed over her. This was about pinning down her own convictions while pulling others from the murkiness of their inherited roles. As the sun set against the horizon, casting long shadows over the terminal buildings, she made up her mind. She needed to confront Rick Donovan. Right or wrong, this was about more than just an incident. It was about confronting the systemic issues within an industry she dreamed of leading one day. If she didn't act, what kind of leader would she ever become? But before she could execute her plan, Cassie received a cryptic text from an unknown number, illuminating a contact with potential inside information about Sam. It simply read, "I know how to help him, but it will cost you." Confusion and intrigue churned within her. What did that mean? What cost was involved in helping Sam out of the shadows? Cassie stood at another precipice, not just of her career, but of moral clarity as well. The next choice she made would define not only her future, but the nature of the battles ahead. Would she be brave enough to step forward, or would she step back into the safety of complacency? Cassie paced her small apartment, the glow of her phone illuminating the tension in her face as she reread the text. "I know how to help him, but it will cost you." The words echoed like a looming shadow, foreboding yet intriguing. She leaned heavily against the kitchen counter, the weight of her next decision pressing down on her. Deep within, the urgency to act surged, but uncertainty lingered. The nature of the cost twisted her stomach. What could this unknown person want from her? Was it financial? Would they pressure her into compromising her ideals? More importantly, if she chose to ignore the message, would Sam endure further unjust repercussions? Cassie grabbed her notebook, flipping to the page where she'd sketched out a rough plan. There was something about the potential link between Sam and her ambitions that drew her deeper into introspection. Could she really lead amidst this tangled web of corporate culture that shielded those who needed accountability? Would she dare to push forward, even risking her aspirations? The next morning arrived, steeped in anticipation as Cassie walked into the break room, her heart racing at the thought of what lay ahead. As she poured her usual cup of coffee, she caught Daryl's cautious gaze again. This time, there was a sort of hopefulness behind his eyes. "Did you think more about what I said?" "Yeah, I did," she replied, toying with the mug's warmth. "But my gut tells me we can't just stay silent." "Not anymore." Daryl hesitated. "You've made up your mind?" "I have. I want to know the truth about Sam. I want to confront Rick Donovan about the company's secrets that impact all of us." But she halted, struggling with the next thought. What if I find out something I don't want to hear? What if you find out something that changes everything? Daryl offered, nodding slowly as an understanding passed between them. The shift passed uneventfully, but Cassie's morale had developed a buoyancy of its own, buoyed by the dialogue with Daryl. By the day's end, she resolved to respond to the text. Sitting at her desk, tablet laid open, she typed, "Who are you? What do you know about Sam?" Before she hit send, self-doubt crept in. Was she being reckless? The gritty reality of confrontation loomed over her. Would this tangent benefit or hinder her? She drew a deep breath, steadied herself, and finally pressed the button. Moments later, her phone chirped again. "Meet me tonight at the old terminal." I can't say more here. The stark finality of the message sent shivers down her spine, both thrilling and petrifying. That evening, the echoing hallways of the old terminal seemed more alive than ever, nostalgia mingling with apprehension as she made her way there. Questions spun in her mind like a cyclone. She feared what truths might emerge from the shadows. As she slipped through the dimly lit entrance, she spotted a figure waiting against the wall. Cassie's heart raced. If this was a setup, she was dangerously out of her depth, but the opportunity to uncover the truth beckoned irresistibly. "Are you Cassie?" the figure asked, stepping into a beam of flickering light. She squinted, recognition dawning as she met the gaze of a junior staff member she barely knew. "What do you know about Sam?" "More than you think," he said, glancing around nervously. "But you'll need to get ready for what's coming." Cassie felt a rush of adrenaline. This was at the moment of truth had arrived, and she had to decide just how far she was willing to go to pursue her convictions, even if the cost would shift her very purpose in the industry. "Tell me everything," she demanded. Little did she know, with truth comes consequence. Would she be ready to embrace the turmoil that lay ahead? Cassie's pulse quickened as the junior staff member shifted uneasily. Something in his demeanor hinted at both urgency and caution, a combination that sent her instincts into overdrive. She could almost taste the air charged with unspoken truths, and the pull to discover the depths of his knowledge was overwhelming. "Listen," he said, looking toward the entrance to the old terminal, more concerned about being overheard than about sharing secrets. "I'm not supposed to be here. But I heard things in passing, conversations I wasn't meant to overhear." "Get to the point," Cassie urged, her tone more impatient than intended. "What have you got?" He gulped, clearly weighing his words. "Sam's not just facing a reprimand. There's a lot more on the line, something serious that involves the CEO's son. It's tied to a project Sam was a part of. Something about fabrication costs being misreported, and if the wrong people find out, it could lead to legal action." "What does that have to do with Sam?" Cassie pressed, feeling the edges of reality fray with the enormity of the implications. If the CEO's son was involved, the stakes escalated beyond just their immediate work environment. "Sam's been trying to protect himself and you," the junior staff member revealed. This mess could bury him, so he refused to whistleblow. But now it's all spiraling out of control, and I don't know what he'll decide. You might be his only chance. Cassie's mind raced, torn between fear and a flicker of determination. They depended on her to confront this beast. Until this moment, she'd just been a cog in the corporate machine, cautious and passive. Now, she felt that familiar spark pushing her toward a pivotal change, an opportunity to flip her narrative from mere participant to leader. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos inside. "It's dangerous. Because I think you're different," he said earnestly. "And if anyone can stir things up and make a difference, it's you." Daryl believes it too. But it's not just about confronting Donovan. There's a bigger picture. You could genuinely change the company culture. His faith in her lit a fire that caught her off guard. Cassie had played it safe for too long, but now, the vision of taking a stand for her colleague and for the integrity she wished to embody felt almost tangible. She was more than a reluctant observer. She could be the catalyst for change. "Okay," she finally said, steeling herself. "What do we need to do?" Together, they strategized, each piece of information weaving into a larger narrative that outlined their path. Cassie's mind buzzed with possibilities and actions, and through it all, she unearthed a determination within herself that had long lain dormant. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of ambition and uncertainty, the weight of her commitment became palpable. No longer was she just a minor player in someone else's story. She was stepping back into her own narrative, ready to confront the giants that threatened to crush the people she cared about. Yet, with this new resolve came an ominous awareness of what lay ahead. Could she truly navigate the turbulent waters of corporate deceit? The pressure was mounting, and just as she was about to voice her thoughts to her companion, a text notification pinged on her phone. The message read, "You have no idea of the lengths they will go to protect themselves. Be careful, Cassie. Trust no one." A chill settled in her gut as she processed the implications. As she looked at the junior staff member beside her, uncertainty crept in. Who could she trust truly? Would her resolve be enough, or would she become another pawn in this dangerous game? In that moment, Cassie knew that the real test of her character and her ambitions was yet to come. The text of the message lingered in Cassie's mind as she and the junior staff member exchanged apprehensive glances. Trust no one. It wasn't just a warning. It was a stark reminder of the isolation that often accompanied leadership, the challenge of navigating treacherous waters without a life raft.
Who sent you that?
She asked, urgency sharpening her voice. The weight of her responsibility pressed down harder now, blurring her focus on the immediate conversation. She couldn't shake the feeling that every choice she made would ripple through her world, consequences spiraling beyond her control. I don't know. It just popped up out of nowhere. I didn't even respond, he admitted, his eyes darting around as if he expected shadows to move. Great, Cassie muttered under her breath. This latest wrinkle amplified her doubts. She felt like a contestant in a high-stakes game where the rules shifted without warning. We need to stay focused. They debated their options, delineating a course that would allow them to bring the situation to light while evading the glaring eyes of those who would rather bury it. Most importantly, Cassie had to consider Sam. If he took the fall alone, it wouldn't just ruin his career. It could also compromise any chance she had to reshape her professional trajectory. Cassie tapped her fingers against her thigh, her mind spinning through the chess game they were unwittingly part of. What if everything fell apart? Did she have the fortitude to handle the backlash? Each potential outcome tempered her ambition with fear, but she couldn't afford to be paralyzed by indecision. Let us reach out to Sam tonight, she finally decided. We need him in the loop. If he's in as deep as I think he is, he deserves to know what we know. We can't just let this spiral. Are you sure? The junior staff member asked, his brow furrowed. What if he's not ready to hear it? What if he feels cornered? It doesn't matter what he feels, Cassie replied, feeling the heat of determination pulse through her. What matters is that he speaks for himself and finds a way to protect himself instead of hiding. If he attempts to take this on silently, it could mean his career, his freedom even. The urgency in Cassie's tone surprised them both, galvanizing her resolve. She needed to act decisively, even if it meant standing against the tide of silence that suffocated the company. As night fell, they made their way to a quiet diner nearby, a neutral ground away from prying eyes. Sitting across from Sam, Cassie felt the temperature of the room shift. He was visibly shaken, but there was a flicker in his eyes that hinted at hope lurking beneath the surface of his anxiety. Sam, we need to talk, she urged, directly confronting the reality he faced. The weight of their united fronts pushed against the fear binding him. The conversation flowed with a mixture of urgency and trepidation, revealing layers of Sam's struggle. Cassie felt the power of his vulnerability echo within her, sparking the conviction that they could navigate the challenges ahead together. Why didn't you tell me about the misreported costs? Cassie asked, pressing further into his silence. I thought I could handle it, Sam replied, his voice low but steady. I didn't want to drag you into the mess, Cassie. But now that you know, Cassie held his gaze. You aren't dragging me into anything. We're in this together. I won't let you drown alone. The diner's neon glow flickered outside, mirroring the turmoil brewing internally. For the first time, Cassie saw a glimpse of how collaborative strength could illuminate the road ahead. Their confrontation with the truth would reshape not only their fates, but the company's ingrained culture too. Still, a question lingered in the background, gnawing at her instincts. Who else was watching? As she caught sight of a figure lingering near the diner entrance, heart pounding, dread curled itself around her spine. In that instant, Cassie recognized the stakes were higher than she had anticipated. The shadows were closing in, and the urgency of their actions might lead to unforeseen consequences. With an ominous feeling, she realized they had triggered something much bigger than just their small part in the corporate machine. Would Cassie's newfound courage be enough against the looming treachery? She stood on the brink of action, but what awaited on the other side was still shrouded in uncertainty. The figure near the diner entrance stood motionless, shrouded in shadows that blurred the lines between clarity and apprehension. Cassie's heart raced as the implications cascaded through her mind. Was this person merely a passerby, or had they found themselves entangled in the very web of intrigue she was trying to unravel? Her instincts, honed from years of navigating the complexities of corporate dynamics, screamed for caution. "Sam, we may not be alone," she whispered, urgency creeping into her tone. The words spilled from her lips like a lifeline tossed into churning waters. Sam turned his head slightly, eyes narrowing, but the stranger lingered with a detached nonchalance that only added to Cassie's unease. She felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders. There was no going back now. Even if they were being watched, addressing the contamination in their corporate culture was paramount. Cassie knew this moment could define not just her career, but the paths of many around her, including Samus. Leading in uncertainty could forge her into something greater or crumble her under pressure. "Let us make this quick," she said, pivoting back to their conversation. "You need to explain everything to me as clearly as possible. What did you find out about the costs? Who else is involved?" Sam leaned in, dropping his voice. "I overheard some discussions in the back office. One of the senior executives had mentioned manipulating the numbers months ago. I thought it was just office gossip, but now I think it's serious. They're communicating in code, and I suspect there's more data hidden between the lines." Cassie's mind raced, parsing through the information like a puzzle yearning to be solved. This could be bigger than she envisioned, but it could also turn into a trap. Her burgeoning confidence flickered at the thought. Navigating through the unknown involved risk, but standing in silence felt like betrayal. "Sam, you can't handle this alone anymore. We must compile all the evidence we have. I'll reach out to some trusted colleagues to see if they can discreetly gather information from their connections. If we expose this, we can shift the culture, rebuild it from the ground up," Cassie declared, her words igniting a ferocity amidst the doubt. Still, uncertainty rippled through her resolve. What if they were to pursue this line of attack only to discover that the shadows stretched deeper than imagined? A twinge of self-doubt crept in, whispering bitter thoughts. Could she really confront those who wielded power over her with confidence and strategy? But she quickly pushed the doubt aside. A burgeoning understanding wrapped around her like armor. Facing the danger was part of the journey, a necessary step toward her professional metamorphosis. Her heart thudded not just with fear, but with an understanding that this risk aligned her with her own values. Her ambition vowed not to be stifled. After a few moments, Cassie stood, decisiveness radiating from her posture. "Let us regroup tomorrow. I'll be here at 10 a.m. You can bring whatever you've gathered. We'll create a roadmap and equip ourselves before going higher up. We need to be ready." As she turned to go, a fleeting smile curled at the edge of her lips, a fierce determination solidifying in her chest. But a lingering whisper of unease clung to her consciousness. Had she truly set in motion the events that would rewrite everything? And what about the figure outside, their intentions, motivations, and possible knowledge of the struggle brewing between the three of them? The shadows loomed, and with each step away from the diner, Cassie grappled with the realization that their actions may have already set off an unstoppable chain of events. The complex dynamics of power in her corporate world now felt inexorably interwoven with her personal evolution. Yet, one question remained. Would she be able to rise against the escalating tides, or would she, too, risk becoming swallowed by them? The future was unwritten, and Cassie could almost feel the impending confrontation tugging at the corners of her mind, a confrontation soon to come. The next morning, Cassie arrived at the diner early, the soft glow of dawn illuminating the empty booths and creating a deceptive sense of calm. Her heart thumped steadily, each beat echoing her mounting drive to confront the looming dangers. The figure from last night's encounter still lingered in her mind, a phantom presence that twisted in her thoughts. Was there a chance they had noticed her little rebellion? Doubts ebbed and flowed, but determination anchored her in place. She slid into the booth that had become their makeshift war room and opened her laptop. The bright screen felt like a portal to a world where knowledge held the power to ignite change. Cassie began drafting an outline for their next steps, contemplating whom to contact and what information might be crucial. It felt invigorating to summon her experience assessing risk, taking strategic action, and inspiring others. As she tapped away, her mind flickered memories of previous projects, past meetings where ideas had been exchanged but never acted upon due to fear or complacency. Each recollection fanned the flames within her. She yearned to cultivate a culture of accountability and support where innovation thrived, rather than hiding behind murky motives. Minutes later, Sam arrived, his face a mix of anxiety and resolve. Cassie gestured for him to sit. "I've been thinking," he started, his hands flexing with urgency. "What if we're just scratching the surface? What if those codes and communications lead to something more?" "Yes," Cassie interjected, excitement threading into her tone. "We need to unravel those connections and examine every lead. Each layer we peel back could expose a pattern. It's not just about exposing wrongdoing, it's about creating a voice for those who feel voiceless." They pored over Sam's notes and the snippets of conversations he decollected, piecing together a mosaic of implications that suggested a systemic rot. As the initial clues fell into place, something flickered in Cassie, a realization that she had the potential to evolve from a mere participant in their corporate environment to a pioneering agent of transformation. The embodiment of that change stirred with vigor, blooming as she envisioned their potential achievements. When it was time to forge their path forward, Cassie hesitated, feeling the weight of ambition tugging at her. "If we go public, we're taking on powerful adversaries. We need to be prepared for backlash. I've seen those in positions of authority turn vicious instead of seeing the truth. That's a risk we must take," Sam replied, his eyes wide with determination. "If we allow fear to dictate this, nothing will change. We could lose ourselves in their darkness." Their eyes met, and in that shared moment of vulnerability, the weight of their cause grew heavier and the stakes soared. Could they align their morals with a life-altering truth that remained hidden in the corporate world? Cassie felt the surge of conflict, a dual flame of fear and hope. "I need to dig deeper into this company culture too. What have people seen or experienced that remains unvoiced?" She mused subtly. "Gathering stories might solidify our foundation if we move forward." Sam nodded, and they began to strategize on gathering testimonies from various departments. As they approached the diner exit, Cassie felt a renewed strength emerging. But the shadows from last night crept back into her mind. She couldn't deny an encroaching sense of dread left over from their previous encounter. Just as they stepped out into the daylight, Cassie caught a glimpse of a familiar figure sitting across the street, the stranger from the diner. A chill traced her spine. Who were they? What did they know? Were they there to help or hinder? The weight of their mission pressed down on her. Of all things tangible, she knew one thing. They were now officially in a game of high stakes, and the danger ahead demanded courage. The moment of truth was fast approaching, threatening to delimit the boundaries of her resolve. Would they break through the walls of silence, or would fear seal their fates? Both possibilities loomed perilously close. As they hurried toward the office, the shadows lingered behind them, twisting around the decisions fast closing, and a direct confrontation awaited them. Cassie pondered what awaited just beyond the door. Would their resolve stand firm, or would they falter? As Cassie and Sam stepped into the office, the air felt thick with impending confrontation. The clatter of keyboards and murmur of voices surrounded them, a stark contrast to the weight pressing on Cassie's shoulders. She breathed in the familiar scent of corporate coffee and floor polish, but the environment felt charged, alive with awareness of what lay ahead. Today, they would take the first steps in amplifying the silent cries of their colleagues. The prospect excited and terrified her in equal measure. Cassie settled into her desk, glancing at Sam as he shuffled papers, his brow furrowed in concentration. They had made plans to gather existing emails, communications, and testimonies from fellow employees who had witnessed the toxic underbelly of their workplace. But now, staring at the blinking cursor on her screen, Cassie confronted deeper insecurities. What if they weren't ready? She questioned every aspect of their strategy. Each step was sticky with the fear of exposure. Determined to refocus, she opened a message draft, allowing herself to flow into the rhythm of writing. Her fingers typed rapidly, detailing not only what they hoped to uncover, but also how they would shield each individual who chose to share their story. Protecting her colleagues became crucial. It was more important than simply unveiling truths. They needed assurance against retaliation. The idea felt daunting yet invigorating, a clear sign that she was shifting from shadow to spotlight. With a deep breath, Cassie summoned her confidence and turned to Sam. Let's start with HR. There has been a lot of whispering about the recent policy changes and layoffs. We need to know what's behind those decisions. She studied his face, hoping to see a reflection of her drive. Instead, she noticed a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, and a pang of doubt stung her. Are we really ready for this? He asked, his voice low. What if we're wrong? What if all this leads to more trouble than it's worth? The question hung in the air, heavy with consequences. But Cassie felt ignited by a truth she had only recently begun to embrace. Yeah, we might face backlash, but think of the impact, she urged, her passion bursting forth. We can be the catalyst for meaningful change. If we don't speak out, who will? The words felt charged, binding them to the weight of their cause. Sam nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression crossing his features. Okay, let us do it. The commitment in his eyes shifted something within her. Fear was a force that could paralyze, but purpose ignited courageous action in its place. They moved through the office together, Cassie pulling a string of strength from each encounter, each nod, and exchange deepening her belief. Conversations bubbled with anticipation, but the idea of revealing their plans still hung heavily over them. By the time Cassie opened the door to the HR department, her heart raced as she confronted the woman at the desk, a slight tremor in her voice. We need to discuss some workplace concerns anonymously, if possible. The weight of her words felt like an unspoken commitment to the organization, daring to initiate a protective shield for anyone at risk. The HR representative eyed them oddly, questions brewing in her gaze. It was in that moment, amid a chorus of apprehension and resolve, that Cassie's inner strength coalesced into a fierce determination. Unveiling the shadows of their corporate world was becoming a calling, one that she could not ignore. Leaving the meeting, a sharp pulse of adrenaline surged through Cassie. With every step, she felt more anchored in her purpose, yet the familiar presence of the stranger lurked in her mind, casting shadows across her resolve. What might they know? Were they watching her? As the day unfolded, Cassie couldn't shake the awareness that decisions loomed around every corner. Would they find allies in their coworkers, or was she risking isolation? The stakes were higher than ever. Her instincts screamed that the next encounter could shift everything. Now, she needed to decide whether to make the call that could change their fate. A tap at the window caught her eye. The stranger watched them, intent and unwavering, and her heart quickened. What was their game? Cassie knew she had a choice to make, and it felt like the ground beneath her was shifting. A pivotal moment awaited, testing the very fabrics of her intentions. Did she have the courage to confront the stranger and uncover their true purpose, or would she retreat into the shadows once again? As Cassie navigated the increasingly chaotic atmosphere of the office, her thoughts collided amidst a whirlwind of trepidation and resolve. She could sense the imminent change, yet doubt was a persistent spectator, whispering questions about her ambitions. What lay hidden behind that stranger's gaze? Were they simply curious, or did they possess information that could dismantle everything she and Sam worked toward? Sam, matching her pace, glanced sideways, his expression a mixture of apprehension and anticipation. They had stepped into uncharted territory, yet Cassie felt an undeniable pull, a burgeoning resilience growing stem by stem with every interaction. Maybe we should gather more evidence first, he suggested cautiously. Just to be safe. I mean, going in half-cocked might put us in a worse position. Cassie considered his words. While the fear of making a wrong move was legitimate, what would hoarding evidence accomplish if it paralyzed their progress? Or we could miss our shot at making a real difference, she countered. I need to feel the pulse of the office. We gather the information as we go, not just in files. Her resolve solidified. Cassie turned her focus back to the workplace around her. Snippets of various conversations floated her way, hinting at discontent and unease. It fueled her sense of urgency. Perhaps she was meant to dive into the uncertainty, linking those silent struggles to tangible initiatives. With newfound clarity, Cassie decided to tackle the ebb and flow of their corporate reality, not just the shadowy whispers drifting through HR but the raw, personal stories of her colleagues. She envisioned creating a platform where those buried frustrations could find the light, a way to shape their tales into a movement. Would their voices unite to usher in change? As the day wore on, Cassie's attention diverged from her own insecurities and honed in on those around her. She approached coworkers casually, probing into their experiences with the company. She asked about their feelings on the recent layoffs, probing for hints of bitterness, fear, and resentment. Each conversation revealed complexities she hadn't anticipated, vulnerability that exposed the human side of corporate life, raw emotions resting just beneath the surface. Every confession molded her purpose into something robust. Did you ever consider reaching out to HR about your concerns? Cassie asked a fellow team member during lunch, her interest sincere but strategic. It's pointless. They'll just dismiss me like everyone else, he said, shaking his head, resignation painting his features. Cassie felt the weight of his defeat. This was exactly the issue she and Sam had been debating. The silence bred fear and inaction. But what if we could change that? What if we brought it all to light together? She proposed, her voice a blend of excitement and determination. He regarded her with surprise, uncertainty laced in his expression. You really think that could work? Absolutely, she replied, emboldened by the spark she saw igniting in his eyes. We're stronger together. If we all share our stories, we can create something powerful. This budding concept blossomed as Cassie delved deeper into one-on-one conversations, gaining momentum and inviting subtle revelations. Each narrative became a thread weaving them closer to a unified standpoint. Then, just as she began to feel a shift of momentum, the echo of a raspy cough jolted her attention, ripping through her budding camaraderie. It was the stranger, lurking just outside the break room, their watchful demeanor a visceral reminder that they were endpoints and periapsis to this change. Had they sensed her ambitions? Did they have tactics to thwart her movement? Cassie's heart raced. The choice was stark now. She had to decide how to confront this figure, a decision that could either activate her burgeoning mission or jeopardize every step they had taken. Would this be the moment of reckoning that she needed to initiate tangible change, or would it send her spiraling back into fear? Caught in the tension of the moment, Cassie's pulse quickened, and she realized her next move could redefine everything. Driven by a singular truth, she took a deeper breath, the daunting prospect of confrontation looming ahead, but the flicker of hope for change ignited within her. Would she gather the courage to make the first move, or would fear continue to hold her back? The time had come to face the unknown. The sun broke through the scattered clouds, illuminating the airport terminal where Cassie Thompson was settling into a pivotal new phase of her career. The whirlwind of recent events transformed her life and the lives of her colleagues. No longer was she just a flight attendant. She emerged as a catalyst for change, a voice for those silenced by corporate protocols, and in that, she found her purpose. As the morning wore on, the atmosphere buzzed not just with the hum of jet engines, but with an undercurrent of anticipation. Sam and she had strategically collaborated with a handful of trusted coworkers, creating a confidential platform where their peers could share grievances of a culture steeped in fear. By opening the floor to collective experiences, Cassie had ignited a movement that transcended her initial ambitions. It had become a quest for integrity and accountability. In the wake of the turmoil, Cassie also forged a bond with Sam, who had begun to shed the insecurities that once paralyzed him. Their meetings not only strengthened their resolve, but also instilled confidence throughout their small alliance. Cassie had taken the plunge into transparency, confronting Rick Donovan with a meticulously crafted brief that outlined the consequences of allowing the status quo to persist. The CEO's response had surprised her with an opening opportunity he extended for dialogue, a glimmer of hope that possibly lay ahead. After her confrontational yet constructive meeting with Rick, Cassie felt a wave of satisfaction. She left his office with a newfound respect, not only for herself, but for the potential she saw in the company's future if they committed to real change. Her initial naivete about the costs of truth felt distant. Now, she was fortified by the understanding that with the burden of leadership came the capacity to sculpt institutional culture. Each day this week had culminated into the awareness of what she had achieved. Cassie's confidence had solidified with the backing of a growing coalition of supporters. They had scheduled a presentation with HR, aimed at unveiling the layers of the deception and bringing the company's unsung issues into the light. As she scanned the terminal, a smile spread across her face. Every conversation felt like a leap towards solid ground, a bridge away from the shadows that had once loomed over them. With determination fueling her actions, Cassie stood before her colleagues once more. This time, she wasn't just speaking to them as a peer. She embodied leadership. She presented her vision, sharing stories and testimonies that illuminated personal and systemic struggles. It wasn't merely about Sam anymore. They were all entrenched in a narrative that demanded to be heard. Each of your voices matters, she declared, the resonance of her words echoing like a clarion call. We can reshape our environment, not just for ourselves but for everyone in our company. We owe it to one another to step into the light and reclaim our stories from the shadows. Cheers erupted, and she could see the brightened expressions of her co-workers. Cassie felt a wave of happiness wash over her. This was her moment. A moment where professional aspirations melded with personal convictions and the culmination of her journey of courage. Later, as Cassie stepped into her apartment, she felt the pride radiating from deep within. She no longer wavered at the thought of her career. Instead of adhering to family expectations that once dictated her path, she had crafted her own. She had defended Sam's character and, in the process, secured her place in a landscape that heralded integrity. Now recognized among her peers as a genuine leader, Cassie found satisfaction not in power, but in the act of restoring it to those who deserved it. The quiet hum of her phone interrupted her thoughts. Another message from HR confirming their acceptance of the policy changes they proposed. A smile spread across her face. She had fought hard for a profound change, and now it was secured. Cassie looked into the mirror, her reflection showing. Not just a flight attendant, but a resolute individual who had conquered her fears and proven her worth. She understood the cost of her decisions and what they had demanded of her, but the rewards far outweighed the risks. With solid confidence, she seized her calling to lead, knowing that this was just the beginning of her journey. Today, I transformed, she whispered to herself, her voice steady. And I'm only just getting started. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a big difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second.